talking about the Tennessee Titans. We haven't talked about them yet, so we're going to be breaking them down. I'm Matt the Jerk, and let's dive into it. So first off, we need to talk about some news. There was some breaking news over the past week. Start with let's start with some news about how my articles are going to go from here on out. So with free agency approaching, we're going to have obviously more news rolling in about different contracts and different players. So I'm going to keep doing my speculation on all upcoming free agents, but I'm probably going to talk less about the non-free agents. So we've been doing the breakdown series at the end of each article where I break down one or two non-free agent contracts for that team. I think I'm going to go away from that just because we're going to have quite an influx of new info to talk about, and live info is going to change day to day. So we'll go away from some of that breakdown, but we'll still be doing breakdowns inside of our speculation. And then obviously this will allow me to focus more on new contracts and what that means for us as owners. So the actual NFL news, we have a little bit that broke over this past week. Ty Montgomery signed a single-year contract with the Saints. It's worth a little over 1.1 million per year for that 1 year. Pretty much the same thing as last year. I mean, he looks to come back with the same role, pretty much carry the same value that he did in 2020, which isn't a whole lot. He'll presumably be the third string running back. They're a team that's struggling with the cap, so it's good they brought him back. Maybe they'll be able to, free up some other room and not really worry about their third string running back, paying him a little bit more because he's on such a cheap contract. So we'll see how they eventually end up sliding underneath the cap. It'll be interesting to see. Next up, we have Ross Dwelly. He signed a single-year extension with the 49ers. So this is probably expected. He's a decent backup to George Kittle. There's no chance that he would ever become the starter, but as far as backups go, he's pretty solid. We saw him fill in the past couple of years for Kittle when he's been out, put up some decent numbers, and they trust him at least as far as blocking goes. So my expectation is that Jordan Reed's going to exit San Fran, so they'll save a little bit of money there. I also want to mention that the franchise window, it closed on the 9th. So let's see. Yeah, as you're reading this, it'll be closing or have closed. So I'm recording this on Tuesday. I'll put anything that I missed in my next video. But the only thing, really no franchise tags as far as I can know. The one that I did want to talk about is someone that we thought was probably going to be franchised or had a chance to be franchised again, and that was Dak. So we know that on Monday, Dak re-signed with the Cowboys. For all intents and purposes, for us as dynasty owners, it's going to be a $40 million per year salary. So 4 years, $160 million. It's very nuanced, his contract, as far as bonuses and incentives. I'm not going to get into that because all that we really need to know for dynasty owner is it's going to be $40 million per year. So his salary is going to be going up quite a bit from it did last year, almost 25%. Anyone that owns him or continued to own him through his injury last year is going to have to find a way to make about $9 million in cap space, make that work. And if not, then you're going to have to get rid of him or trade him. So let's jump right into some speculation now that we got the news out of the way. And as anything, breaks either today or tomorrow, I'll include that in the next video if you think that I missed something. So today we're going to be speculating on 3 Titans free agents. And they are Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, and Anthony Firkser. So they're all 3 unrestricted free agents. We'll go over, let's see who we're going to talk about first. Let's go over Jonnu first. So he finished the 2020 season as a tight end 15. He missed 2 games due to a knee injury. So he posted only 2 games that were above 13.6 fantasy points, and he had 6 games with less than 10. So that's not exactly the most reliable player. For a tight end, maybe that's a little bit better because we know how rough they've been. But he's not really a player that you want heading your tight end committee and dynasty owner. Regardless, his rookie contract expiring. He'll be looking to make right around $8 million per year, according to Spot Track. 25 years old, reaching the prime of his career. He was only targeted 65 times last year, and that ranks 18th among tight ends. That's pretty disappointing. Hopefully, if he does get re-signed, he'll get some more usage because he's a very talented receiver, big tight end. So hopefully they can utilize him a little bit better. So the trade advice for him would be if you're unhappy with how 2020 finished for Jonnu, you're probably going to be really unhappy when he's making, almost 9-10 times that. He'll be making between about $7 to $9 million in 2021. So his value is just not going to be there unless he takes a big step forward. It's possible. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't be a buyer for Jonnu at this moment. So I'd probably hold off on any trades. If you really set on the idea that he's going to have a second contract breakout, I wouldn't pay any more than, say, a mid-2021 third or somebody like Andy Dalton. I put that in my article. So you might scoff at that, Andy Dalton for Jonnu Smith, but I don't know. I find it hard to trust him, especially when he's going to be in the upper echelon of tight end contracts. But could be wrong. We'll find out. We'll see what he gets paid and where he ends up. So Anthony Fursker is up next. He finished the 2020 season as tight end 26, and that was almost entirely due to his Week 6 performance of the Texans. So this is what he did in Week 6. He put up 8 receptions, 113 yards, and 1 touchdown. So I did a nice little chart of this in my article, but I'll break it down for you. So with Week 6, this is what Fursker did in 2020. Receptions per game, little under 3. Yards per game, 27.6. And touchdowns per game, he only had 1, so that's almost negligible. But his fantasy points per game were 5.9. Not reliable, as we know. But without Week 6, we see that his receptions per game dropped 0.4. His yards per game dropped by, 6.5. Dropped 6.5 yards per game, just missing that one game. And then his fantasy points per game dropped to 4.5. So from 5.9 to 4.5. So it really shows how not necessarily fluky that game was. Some may call it a fluke, but just how that one game really jumped up his numbers almost by 25%. So I know you can't take that game out fully, but I would call that a pretty fluky game. Anytime a backup tight end scores something like that, it's pretty eye-opening. So what do we know about Fursker? He's 26 years old. He'll make more money in 2021, but I don't expect it to be a lot more. Put him right around $3 million per year for now. And trade advice for him is he's available in a third of Dynasty Owner League, so I check free agent auction if you're really buying in on him. You should probably have already own him by now if you want to buy in on him. If he's available and you have an extra spot, I'd pick him up. No doubt worth rostering until we find out where he goes, but I'd hold off on making an offer for him until we find out. Final speculation is Corey Davis. This is the one that probably most people want to hear about. I was down on Corey Davis coming into 2020. Most of you probably know that if you read a few of my beginning articles of the year. And I'm going to read you a quote from one of my very first articles. This is one of the first ones I ever wrote for Dynasty Owner. So Corey Davis had the big volume game that his owners have been waiting for. He told 7 receptions. And this is only the second time in his career that he's had 7 more receptions. And it's something he didn't do at all last year. Davis is owned in 74% of Dynasty Owner leagues. Remember, this was last year. And his yearly salary is $6.3 million. If you don't own him, I wouldn't be rushing to pick him up. So I was obviously talking about one of his, I believe it was the first game of his season in 2019. He had a big game, call it a blow-up game. And I was advising people not to tilt on that. Don't necessarily just jump in and buy into it. And I think that's good advice in general. But as we saw, he had a very good 2020 season. So he'll be making more money this year in 2021 than he did last year. So let's break it down a little bit. Like I said, it was right after his week 1 performance. And in that week, he had 7 receptions, 101 yards, and 17.1 fantasy points. So a very good week. Assuming you own Davis in 2020, his 2020 season will look similar to his 2019 season. That's what I assumed. I assumed that, he was getting towards the end of his first contract. It was going to be a big late career breakout if he was going to break out. And it's kind of what he did. And so I was wrong on that, and I'll take that. But in 2019, he registered over 10 fantasy points only twice. So he had kind of a big track record to go on that wasn't too reliable as far as high production games are going to be. Also, his ADP last year was 234, so very low. And he was owned in 74% of Dynasty Owner leagues. So it turns out that buying low was the correct option. And here's what he did in 2020 total. So in 2020, Corey Davis had 65 receptions, nearly 1,000 yards, just shy of it, 5 touchdowns, and that was good for 190.4 fantasy points. So some might consider it a lackluster season. He's finished wide receiver 30, so it's not, spectacular. It's good, it's solid. But the fact that he's a middle range salary player, I would argue that, that obviously jumps up his value. So here's who he outperformed as far as dynasty dollar per fantasy point go. Corey Davis outperformed Tyler Boyd, Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, and Devontae Parker. So those are all kind of in the same similar area as far as salaries go. And Devontae might have surprised me a little bit that he beat him out. Tyler Boyd, not so much. He's got a high contract. Robbie Anderson kind of fell apart at the end of the season. And then Jamison Crowder, he had a good start to the season, but he's making quite a bit more than Davis was. So this is, I think, is the best part of what Davis did. So we know that Davis is going to make more money in 2021 than he did in 2020. But I don't see it being too much more, and this is why. I think the upper limit for Davis is about $12 million per year. SpotTrack has him calculated for 9.8. I think if he gets 9.8 and you own him, that's going to be a big steal. He's going to be a steal in drafts. He's going to be a steal in value once you eventually own him. He'll be a steal if you try to trade for him for that contract amount. But the big question, as it is with every free agent, is where is he going to sign? So my trade advice for Corey Davis would be, so a lot of these free agents I've been talking about, I've kind of been underwhelmed and haven't given you much good advice on what to trade for him. A lot of them, say don't trade for straight up. Don't even do it. But Davis has quite a bit of value. If you're looking to acquire him, it's probably going to take more than you would think. This is where I would start the conversation. I gave these 3 examples in my article. I would start with something like James Conner for Corey Davis. James Conner, injury risk. He's had injuries the past couple of seasons, stayed healthy towards the end of the season, but really an underwhelming season. So he's going to be making more money this year. Davis is going to be making more money this year. If you're set at running back, need a wide receiver, I think that's a good trade. Another interesting one that I came up with was Cam Akers. So if you own Cam Akers, you trade him for David Montgomery and Corey Davis. You're probably going to lose out in the long term because David Montgomery is going to get paid in the next couple of years, and Cam Akers, he's set for the next 3. But I think that's good value initially, especially for this year. And then if you want to do a straight pick for it, I'd give an early 2021 second for Corey Davis. So just some examples to get the ball rolling if you decide you want to trade for him, if you have some of those players, some of those pick options. Those would be, I think, pretty fair value to trade for. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. I appreciate everybody coming out listening. Go ahead and read my article. It breaks it down a little bit further into detail. And then I'll be back next week. Just ask that everybody follows us on Twitter at Dynasty Owner, and then check Dynasty Owner's YouTube as well to view all these videos that we've been putting out. We got 4 of us right now putting out content weekly for Dynasty Owner, getting ready for free agency, which is coming up next week. It'll be starting next week, so I'll keep you appraised to all the new and breaking news that comes out of that. And then follow me right down here. You can see my name, Matt the Jerk, at Dynasty Jerk on Twitter. So I appreciate everybody listening, and take care.